Hey guys, I hope things are going well for you today. We're just trying out this way of doing class, so I hope it works. Just trying to make it easier for Mr. Keesing to handle all the technology and everything. So just, Mr. Keesing, just pause me whenever you're ready to talk to the class or when it's recess or anything like that. I'm just going to teach the lesson from here. And today we are starting poetry. And if you don't already, everyone should have this poet's journal. This is your workbook and your reader. And so you can pause me and pass them out, or you can take them out and look at them. I wanted to start here on this screen because you can see all of the lessons, and each lesson is a different poet and one or two poems from that poet. And then you're going to be writing a poem in that style or using the things that you learn. A lot of people feel differently about poetry. Maybe you like it, maybe you don't like it, depending on what your experience was with it before. As always, I'm asking you to have an open mind and give it a try, because I think this is really neat, the way that they teach it, and your little journal. Maybe you've had a chance to look through it. So let's give it a try and check out some poetry. If you could pause me after I ask this question and pull some sticks and have a discussion in the class. Have you read poetry before? And if so, when and where? Pause for discussion. Okay, and hopefully you unpaused me. And what poems or poets do you particularly like? If you already talked about that, that's great. Otherwise, pause me here. And what words, ideas, or feelings come to you when you hear the word poetry? Like we said, maybe positive, maybe negative. That's okay, but we're trying to have an open mind. So you can pause me if you haven't already discussed that yet. All right, so people have had many different feelings about poetry through history. Let's get into our presentation, and we'll be talking about this poem, To the Snake. But our learning goals for this week, or this lesson, I should say, yes. Our learning goals for this lesson are coming up on the screen, and they are: I can identify and define the basic elements of a poem's structure. I can discuss poetic devices used in the poem To the Snake. Remember, we talked about literary devices in our last unit. So we think of devices as phones and tablets and things like that. But poetic devices are things that the poet does to help you maybe see an image in your mind, maybe hear some interesting sounds in the poem. Okay, so we'll be looking at that with To the Snake, and you will be composing your own apostrophe poem. This word is apostrophe, right? It's the same thing as the little line that you put when you own something, right? Tony's bike, right? The apostrophe S. That's the same word, apostrophe. So if you haven't been able to spell that before, you can see the word there. And this is going to be an apostrophe poem. I don't think it's really related to the apostrophe S, but we'll see, right? We'll see what relation it has there. And in your Poet's Journal on pages 9 and 10, you can see that you have vocabulary. You're going to have two types of vocabulary. You're going to have vocabulary that's in the poem, right? Words that are in the poem, like glinting, pulsing, and wake. And then you're also going to have vocabulary that's about the poetic devices or about the parts of the poem. So you can look at those on page 9 and 10. And you can see that apostrophe means writing that addresses a person or thing that is not present. Interesting. Content. We know kind of about what content is, right? Words or subject of a piece of writing. Form is the shape, structure, or appearance of a piece of writing, sometimes even just how it looks on the page for poems. Line break is where the line ends, which isn't always the end of the sentence in a poem, right? It's a line break. Stanza is a section of poems. People before have referred to these as paragraphs of the poem because it's the section, right? But in a poem, it's called a stanza. Everybody say stanza. All right, good job. And then stanza break is the blank space that divides those two stanzas. And back to our vocabulary in the poem: glinting, sparkling or shining, the light was glinting off of the water. Pulsing, throbbing rhythmically like a heart beating, or your pulse, right? It's the blood pulsing through your arm. And wake, this isn't a verb like to wake up, but it's a noun like the trail of disturbed water or air left by the passage of a ship or aircraft. So if you've been on a boat, you might be aware of when you get close to shore, there's a no wake zone where you're supposed to not have a wake behind your boat, but you're going really fast, the wake gets very big. Okay, so some vocabulary that we're going to pay attention to today. Thank you for paying attention to my video. I appreciate you. Kuma Chris, at any time, feel free to stop and remind the students to focus. Yes, very good. Okay, so you have your poet's journal. Excellent. And here's a quote from the great poet Emily Dickinson. "If I feel physically as if the top of my head were taken off, I know that is poetry." Okay, so we might be thinking about feeling physically like the top of our head is taken off. Okay, and we're going to open our books to the snake, to the page of To the Snake. And it's right at the beginning. Yeah. Oh, I forgot to talk about the biography of Denise Levertov. This is Denise Levertov. She's the poet, the author of To the Snake. And it's good to know some information about the poet, and you can kind of understand them a little bit better. She was born in 1923 in Essex, United Kingdom, so that's England, right? At a young age, she knew writing would be her future. "I lived in a house full of books, and everybody in my family did some kind of writing. It seemed natural to me to be writing something. I wrote poems from an early age and stories," she recalled. Her mother encouraged her to send poems to the poet T.S. Eliot, who wrote Cats, by the way. And at age 17, she published The Double Image, her first collection of poetry. In 1947, she moved to the United States. So let's see, she was born in 1923. She moved when she was about 24 years old and continued publishing poetry. Influenced by the writing of William Carlos Williams, another famous poet, she began to experiment with a style of imagery. Remember this word imagery? Making a picture in your mind. The word image is right there. That transformed everyday objects into something remarkable and new. Her collections of poetry, including The Sorrow Dance, To Stay Alive, Freeing the Dust, earned many awards. She continued to write and teach until her death in 1997. All right, so let's get into Denise Levertov's poem, To the Snake, by Denise Levertov. To the Snake. Please read along with me while I read it to you. It's on page 3 in your book. Green snake, when I hung you round my neck and stroked your cold pulsing throat as you hissed at me, glinting, arrowy gold scales, and I felt the weight of you on my shoulders, and the whispering silver of your dryness sounded close at my ears. Green snake, I swore to my companions that certainly you were harmless, but truly I had no certainty and no hope, only desiring to hold you for that joy which left a long wake of pleasure in the leaves moved, and you faded into the pattern of grass and shadows, and I returned, smiling and haunted, to a dark morning. I'm going to read it one more time. Please make sure you're following along. Remember, you could be thinking about the structure, the form, the line breaks at the end of each line. Why did she break it there? Just the imagery, what you hear, what you feel. Green snake, to the snake. Green snake, when I hung you round my neck and stroked your cold pulsing throat as you hissed at me, glinting, arrowy gold scales, and I felt the weight of you on my shoulders, and the whispering silver of your dryness sounded close at my ears. Green snake, I swore to my companions that certainly you were harmless, but truly I had no certainty and no hope, only desiring to hold you for that joy, which left a long wake of pleasure as the leaves moved and you faded into the pattern of grass and shadows, and I returned smiling and haunted to a dark morning. All right. So let's turn to the next page in your poet's journal and 1.1, which is page 4 and page 5. And I want you to go ahead and answer these questions the best that you can. And of course, it says you can consult the poem or the glossary or the vocabulary on pages 9 and 10 while you work. See what you can do. And then Kumu Chris, set the timer for 5 minutes, and after 5 or 7 minutes, when you see most people are finished working, could you go over these with the class? In fact, I'll go over them with the class. So turn me back on in about 4 or 5 minutes. Okay, very good. All right, class. So I assume that you paused me and went over them, and now you have me back on. And interestingly enough, we don't have blanks here like we usually do. Okay, let's talk a little bit about this poem. There are some special terms that describe different parts of a poem. Stories and essays are usually in paragraphs, right? And those are formed by sentences. But grammatical rules are different for poetry. Poets are allowed to experiment with grammar, language, sounds, and meaning. So you don't have as many of the rules, right? They may contain sentences, but they're usually written in lines and do not follow the same rules of capitalization and punctuation as fiction and nonfiction, which is generally called prose writing. Poetry gives poets permission to and freedom to play with language in order to select beautiful words, express emotion, and create images in our mind or sounds in our ears without worrying about following the same rules of grammar that we see in prose. All right, so let's look at the poem again. And you see the first line, green snake, when I hung you round my neck. Can you count the number of lines in the poem? You can pause me if you need to and call on a student, please. Yes, 16 lines. Very good. And where the poem's first sentence ends, where is that? Where does the poem's first sentence end? So we would look for a period, right? All the way, exclamation point, all the way down here at harmless. So we could end our lines in places where there could be a natural pause, like here, around my neck, and stroked your cold pulsing throat, right? So we have some playing around with these line breaks, but still having a exclamation point at the end. So remember, we're talking about lines and we're talking about line breaks, and we have the definitions of those in our poetry journal. Once again, a line break is where a line ends, and a line is just the piece of writing. So green snake when I hung around my neck, that's a line. And the line break is where you go to your next line. All right, very good. And of course, you have those things in your glossary. You know all about using glossaries. Also, instead of breaking them into paragraphs, we break poems into stanzas, right? That we talked about before. Do you see how many stanzas are in this poem? Please pause me and have someone answer in class. Yes, 2 stanzas because we have this white space between our stanzas. Very good. So when we speak about the shape, structure, appearance of writing, we're talking about its form. Yes. And now that we have some tools for speaking about the form, we're going to look at the content as well. Let's do a quick check for understanding. and make sure that you're with us and paying attention. So once again, I'll ask the question, but Kuma Chris can pause me and have people answer in the room. This one is a thumbs up or thumbs down, so please follow along. A poem is comprised of stanzas, which look a little bit like paragraphs. True, good job. Each stanza is comprised of lines, not sentences. True as well. Good job. Poets always follow grammar rules. Not true. Good job. A stanza break is defined as the poet's choice to end a line. Not true. A line break would be where the poet chooses to end the line, not the stanza break. That's where the poet chooses to end the stanza. Very good. Okay, so important vocabulary that we need to know for poetry. Please work on those as we go. Now, I would like you to work on page 4 and 5 in your book, and go ahead and pause me. And Kuma Chris, if you could set a timer for 7 minutes, and everybody do your best work for the next 7 minutes. When you're finished, read silently as always, and wait for us in. Thank you very much. Okay, and after that break, hopefully you did some good work. Here are the definitions of form and content, right? We talked about shape, structure, and appearance of a piece of writing, and content is what it's actually about, right? So like if you're a content creator, it's what you're creating about. Very good. And let's go over what you did in your work. So write down the poem's title here. To the snake. Got that? Who or what is being addressed in the poem's title? Pause me and raise your hand and answer here. Or you can use the sticks, of course, Kuma Chris. And yes, the green snake is being addressed. I hope you answered in sentences. The top one did not really have to be a sentence because it just said write down the poem's title, but this one is an actual question. So please answer your questions in sentences. How does the speaker describe the green snake in stanza 1? Okay, so let's see. The speaker describes the snake with words, words like, but not really words like because it's actual words: green, hissing, glinting, dry. Yes. The weight of you. So maybe I'm just going to say the weight of you. And maybe that could mean that the snake is heavy, right? The weight of you. And the description of the throat, feeling like the snake is cold. Did you catch that one? Let's see. Whispering silver of your dryness closed at my ears. Oh, stroked your cold pulsing throat. Yes? So I think you might also have said cold. You might have said pulsing. Yeah? It's a little scary sounding. How got that? And very good. Helpful hint. Some questions require that you find the exact word or phrase in the poem to write your answers. For some questions, it will be necessary for you to read closely, right? This is reading closely. Good job. Oh, I have to put this. Maybe and pulsing and then a period at the end of my sentence. Yes? If you're trying to copy this down and I'm going too fast, let's see if I can make it a little smaller for you there. Okay, please follow along. And if you have a classmate who has the answer written down and it's easier for you to copy from them, you always can do that, right, while we're going over the work. According to stanza 2, what did the speaker tell her companions, her friends, the people around her, that she believes about the snake? Hopefully you wrote, she believed the snake was harmless. Yes, according to stanza 2. I swore to my companions that certainly you were harmless. Number 6. Why did the speaker decide to hold the snake? The speaker tells the snake, but truly I had no certainty. What did the speaker really believe? Oh, did I skip? Sorry, I skipped number 5. What did the speaker really believe about the snake? I had no certainty. Let's go down here. She really believed that she wasn't sure if it would hurt her or not. Yeah? She thought it was harmless, but truly I had no certainty. Why did the speaker decide to hold the snake? Good question, right? And it says she thought it would bring her that joy. I had no certainty and no hope, only desiring to hold you for that joy. So she thought it would make her happy. Yeah? She thought it might make her happy. That joy. Okay? At the end of the poem, the speaker says that after holding the snake, she was smiling and haunted. What words or details in the poem explain why she might feel this way after holding the snake? Maybe someone in the class could raise their hand and share, because you could have different feelings, right? Because this is a poem. It could give you different ideas. I returned feeling smiling and haunted to a dark morning. So maybe you said something like, I think she was happy, but also a bit scared of the snake, or scared to return to her dark morning. What was dark about her morning? Yeah, there's some questions there. It's not so much like, definitely not like nonfiction, and not very much like fiction, where we have a better idea of what is going on. Sometimes poems can have completely different interpretations. So if you need to pause me and talk in the class about what you think about that, that's fine. Otherwise, what you wrote down is great. As long as you have something written there, some idea, some discussion. Okay, and everybody should have the answers to all of those questions. And we're going to move on to writing our own apostrophe poems. Okay, very good. You can always pause me if you need to get this copied down. And we're going to write poems called apostrophe poems, right? So what is an apostrophe poem? Well, like we said before, it's a form of punctuation. Yeah. So like, as I said, if I had a friend named Tony and it was Tony's car. Yeah. My friend named Tony owns a car. And then this is the apostrophe, right? And this is how you spell apostrophe. Kind of different spelling, so it's good to know about that. But it's also a poem that addresses a thing or a person who is not present. So Levertov's poem is an apostrophe poem because it's addressing the snake, right? To the snake, and it starts with the words green snake. So it's addressing the snake. All right. So she was writing poems when she was a young girl, and you're a young girl or a young boy. You're going to be writing a poem today. It's a good start in poetry. So you're going to think about different things that you want to address in your poem. Talk to the people at your table about different animals that you have interacted with, like how Levertov is talking about this green snake that she has interacted with, right? So think about different animals you have interacted with. Maybe it could be a neighbor's dog, right? That barks at you. That's an animal you have interacted with. Maybe it could be a rat that you saw running across your garden. A monkey at the zoo, your horse, your pet dog, your pet cat, right? Some animal that you have interacted with, and think about that interaction. Okay. Pause me and talk to your neighbors about that for a few minutes. Okay, and we're back, and we're going to be working in 1.2, which is on page 6 and 7, and you're going to be working on drafting this poem that we're thinking about. So you could use the animal that you talked about in your group, or you could use another animal, right? You were just brainstorming, just getting some ideas out. So you don't have to use those ideas. But now we are going to start working on our poems. So earlier in your group, you listed a number of different animals and ways you have seen, watched, or otherwise experienced them. Using those group ideas or some other ideas, pick an animal experience you would like to describe in your poem. And here on number 1, what animal are you writing about and where did you see it? Okay. So I'm going to write about my puppy, Bailey, who lives at my house. Okay. You are writing about your animal, not my animal. You're writing about your animal. So go ahead and get that written down. And perhaps you saw, smelled, heard, or touched the animal. In the space below, write down how you experienced the animal. And if you did one of those things, write as many as necessary. Okay, so we're brainstorming. We're getting a whole bunch of ideas out. Fill up this space under number 2 with as much as you can about interactions with that animal. Remember, this is, we're not being silly, right? So like if you see an animal at the zoo, maybe the crocodile, right? You're not going to say that you touched the crocodile because you didn't touch the crocodile, right? So we're using actual kilo, actual observation, and filling this out now. Go ahead and do yours. Okay, and if you need more time, you can pause me here. Otherwise, we're going to go on to number 3. What did the animal do when you were around it? Okay, go ahead and work on number 3. Okay, once again, I'm going to move on to the next one. If you need more time in the room, go ahead and pause me here. What would you like to tell the animal now that the two of you are no longer together? Sorry. All right, pause me if you need more time there to work on your part. And then we're moving on to drafting. Now that you know what your poem is about, it's time to draft it. And if you decided, oh, I'd rather do a different animal, just focus on one animal for now. You can always write more poems later. Use the space on the following page to complete the following steps. Think about your poem's title. It should describe what your poem is about. On the first line, write the title of your poem. So here is where you're going to put your title. And remember, Denise Levertov's was To the Snake. So it could simply be To My Horse or To My Puppy Bailey or something else. It's up to you. And then stanza 1, on the lines of the first stanza, write about when and how you first experienced the animal. You might describe what you were doing and what you noticed about the animal. Stanza 2, on the lines of the second stanza, write about what the animal did when it was around you and what you want to say to the animal now. If you finish with time to spare, look back over your draft and try to add one word or detail to describe the animal or what happened with it. Okay? And you can go back and forth between these directions so that you know what to do. And go ahead and write your poem. So I'm going to write mine, and you're going to write yours. And if you need more time, of course, you can pause me later. finished my draft, but I'm thinking about changing some words and looking at green snake to get some inspiration of things that could switch around. All right. And if you're done, that's good. Otherwise, in the room, you can pause me here and continue working. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about our poems. If you would like to read some of them aloud, you could, if there's time in the room. And make sure that you're a great audience for each other, of course, being positive and not making any comments. And congratulations on writing your first poem. Nice work. Aloha. Thanks for watching.